Hello, everyone. How's it going? Long time no see, I would say. But I was here for the last GHW, and I'm back in the AI ML week. Been yeah, too long, I feel, right? Anyways, how's everyone doing? How has Global Hack been for you so far? And I say getting started soon, but we have started, so let me remove that. Hi. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Finance with Python sessions as a part of MLH Global Hack Week, AI ML Week 2025. And I'm very excited. Why? Because this one will help us, or I want to go through Python with all of you, learn from the basics, so from the bottom up, but at the same time, we'll also explore some concepts about finance. So we will learn Python, but in the context of stocks, in the context of foreign exchange, in the context of any other terminologies that come to mind. Okay, so this one would be a long session, definitely, I would say. uh, I have currently 5 sessions, but if something does, like, if we don't end up completing everything that I have planned, I would request for a few additional ones, and we'll get through most of the things. Okay. Uh, yeah, that is my introduction to all of you. And for folks who are joining me for the very first time, who have never been in any of the previous global hack weeks and don't know about me, I am Utkarsh, but prefer to go by UT because that's how everyone knows me in office, in MLH, friends, everyone. Okay, so I once again, hello, I'm UT from MLH, and I am a coach at Major League Hacking. I love streaming out technical content. So that is why you would see me at nearly every Global Hack Week, because I just feel like if there's something that I have learned, I should share it with everyone so that they can learn it too. Love to build projects. So that is why all my Global Hack Weeks are about hands on coding in general. And apart from that, I work. I am a software engineer, I would say, currently focusing on front end development, but I try my hands on anything and everything that I get. So back end, this, that, whatever. Okay. Now that's enough about me. Let's get started. Now, step one that I'm going to request you all is to please register for the session. So the link is in the chat. Okay. So please do register for the session because it helps me, it helps you collect points. You have checked in. That's one of the proof that we have, and helps MLH keep a track of how many people are actually enjoying these streams, right? So please do check in. Other than that, there's one other thing, which is live coding and live following, right? So in that case, I have created a GitHub repository. The link is again in the chat. So this is where all the things that I write, all the things that I code, I will push to. So at any point you feel like, oh, I'm missing something, or let's say, I think this was not covered, or like I missed it out, you can find it on the GitHub repository. Okay, after I push, of course. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to give an intro on. And let me set some background, and I think this one's good, right? Yep, I think that's good enough. Okay, so just some background music for the chill vibes, of course. And now let's get started. So what do I want you to start with? Step one is setting up your environment. So in the past, normally I do usually don't go through this, but I think this time is kind of an exception. But I actually want to go through uh, setting up environment with you. So to set up environment, it should be pretty simple. Step one would be to download VS Code because that is what exclusively I'm using. And that ways, if there are any shortcuts or any tips, tricks, or whatever, it would make it easy to do it in VS Code. So definitely download VS Code. Once done, then you need to download Python. Okay. I will share the link in the chat. So if you don't have Python installed, in that case, please download Python on your system. I have sent the link in the chat. You can download any of the versions, download the latest. But anyways, we will go to create a virtual environment. So that should be fine. So download Python, install it on your system. Should be pretty easy with respect to double clicking, choosing through licenses, accepting nearly everything. Just accept all the defaults and you should be fine. Uh, Nothing special is required. Okay. So once you have done all the downloads, so let me just change this so that you see much more. Okay. So yes, download VS Code. Oh, should I give you the link to Visual Studio Code? Let me do that. Okay, there we go. So download Visual Studio Code and download Python, install both of them, and after that we'll get started. Okay. There's no particular setup required specifically. There may be some extensions that I might want you to add, and I will show them to you after you have done downloading this. We'll give you like, let's say 10-15 seconds. Most of the folks that I have uh, seen in the community, in this wider community, definitely have Visual Studio Code and definitely have Python. Okay, so I think that should be good enough wait time. Let's move on to the next bits. So once you have both of them downloaded, then we will require some extensions. Okay, so some of the extensions that I definitely want you to add. Uh, One would be the Python. Okay, so if you go over to your VS Code, and you will find on the left side that there is an extensions tab. Let me zoom in a bit. So you'll find an extensions tab, and I want you to download, add the extension of Python. Gives us some nice tips and tricks there. The second one that I want you to add is rough. It is a linter and formatter, and I've kind of uh, become used to it. I find it pretty fast, pretty quick, uh, better than, like, this is my personal opinion, better than anything else that is out there. Okay, so definitely download rough, download Python. Like, all you have to do is there would be a button which is to install extension. Click on it, it will install the extension. Similarly for a rough by Astral Software here, so download that, and that should be pretty much it. You could download Jupyter, but we would work with Jupyter in the browser, so I don't think it is really required, but you can have it. Okay, if you want to look at Jupyter Notebook in your VS Code, definitely have it. Okay, so that is everything right now. Once you have installed Python, okay, if you downloaded Python, you installed it, you can actually check what is your version by doing Python space dash dash version. For me, it returns Python 3.12.4. Okay, so that is the version that I have installed. Some folks might need to do Python 3 dash dash version depending on the system that you are on, like Linux or something. Then in that case, again, you can do Python 3 space dash dash version, and that should return to what is the version of Python 3 that you have installed. So Python 3 is specifically because there used to be a Python, not used to, there still is a Python 2 version, which is now deprecated. Uh, we had a Python 2 version, Py 2, which was the original Python, and then came an improvement on it, which is Python 3, Py 3. And if you have both of them installed, sometimes it goes, oh, if you search for Python version, then it would say something related to version 2. But if you have Python, if you search for Python 3 version, then it will tell you what is the Python 3 version on your system. Okay. Oh, I missed a lot of chats. Hi, hello to everyone who said hi and hello. And there is this excitement. Love that excitement. I hope I stand tall on all of those. And there is a question. Is there going to be any discussion related to technical analysis of fintech markets? I'm not sure if we will reach the market side, but we will definitely reach some kinds of analysis like Bollinger Bands, EDA, any exploratory data analysis of stocks uh, like Tesla, Apple, Microsoft. Just, plotting some libraries, doing some calculations, cumulative summing, numericals, bit of this, bit of that. We will reach all of that, and depending on, like, I definitely want to do this. That is, want to also talk about options. Okay, what, like FX options specifically, like how does FX market work, how is the options calculated, European options, American options. These are all the things that are out there. I won't go detail into like a college professor. So you won't, I'll use some terms, but I may skip over explaining it depending on time constraints. But if you know the terms, I'm pretty sure it should be easy to Google, right? Okay. Now that we have VS Code installed, we have Python installed, we installed the extensions of Python and Rough and probably Jupyter. Let's get going. Okay, step one is setting up virtual environments. Okay, so I'll remain on screen for a bit and then I'll go away from screen when I start coding. But for now, I will remain on screen because I want to show you how to set up a virtual environment. So what is a virtual environment? So right now, if I do Python 3 version or Python version, like whatever you say, in that case, I get a version that is globally installed on my system. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. I get a version that is globally installed, but that is not exactly the version that I want. Reason being, uh, if I install any libraries, okay, if I install any libraries, then in that case, there is a like it will install globally on my system, which is nice sometimes, but it's also unnecessary. Okay, number one, it's unnecessary, I feel. Number two is, if something corrupts my global environment, I'll have to uninstall Python, find all traces of Python, reinstall the whole thing. Okay, so what is good is having some isolated environments where I can do my coding, where I can do my development, and don't corrupt my global environment. And that is where the concept of virtual environment come in. Virtual environments are these isolated pieces of environments that where you can install multiple libraries and they won't affect your global environment. So we will learn to create a isolated virtual environment. Okay, and you could do it in multiple ways, I would say. Like, you have the options of installing like Anaconda and creating like Conda environments. If you are not aware of the term, that is fine, but I think it would be good to do it as a part of Python itself. And there is something in Python which is called as VENV, virtual environment. So you can read more about it here. Python VENV. I will share the link in the chat. Sorry. So Python VENV, it is supports creating lightweight virtual environments, each with their own independent set of Python packages. Okay, so that's all we need to know. Virtual environments, independent set of packages, and don't need to interact with each other. And I'm assuming that all of us actually installed nearly at least 3.1 Python 3.12. So yeah, we should be fine. If anyone has a version before like 3.3, then unfortunately you'll have to kind of reinstall and get on at least a more latest version. Okay, cool. So let's do the installation. Also, let me arrange my screen a bit. Okay, cool. I think this should be fine. Okay, so virtual environments, let's create. Let me close this one and let me clear this and let's go in. So step one, open your terminal, of course. If you want to open it, you can go like terminal on the top, new terminal, and that should open a terminal for you. Let me actually start from scratch. So new terminal should take like open in the current folder. Oh, I did not exactly show you how to open this folder in VS Code, but it should be simple enough. Once you have VS Code installed, and it will tell you, you can go into file and open folder, create a folder somewhere on your system. I created a finance with Python folder. So you can go into file, open folder, choose that folder, and that's it. Or since you are going to follow me locally developing, in that case, what I can suggest is fork this repository. Okay. Last time there was a very big discussion about forking versus cloning. What I want you to do is fork this repository. The link is in the chat again. Once you fork the repository, you will create a local copy, a copy of my repository on your GitHub account. Once you have created that copy, then go to your GitHub account and this repository, then go on to code and clone the repository. More information on this would have been shared as part of the getting started with Git and GitHub intro to Git and GitHub sessions that we have taken at MLH. If it's still unclear, I would request you to please go and watch those sessions. Definitely important. And at the same time, if you can't follow along right now, once you've watched the sessions, then you can come back and do the forking, cloning, and everything. For now, you can just watch. Step one, fork the repository. Step two, clone your version of forked repository. Then you can push your code to your repository. Otherwise, you won't be able to push any code that you write, because if you clone mine, you can't push to mine. Okay. If you have created your own in general, if you have gone into like your account and you have gone into new repository, then yes, you can clone your own version. But if you want to remain in sync with my changes, in that case, fork the repository. I see already 4 people have done that, which is nice. Okay. What's happening here? Sorry, something happened with my system. It just like went weird. Okay. Yes, if you have created your own, then you do need to clone it, like your own version. Okay, I think this should be good. Yeah, we did not do anything significant right now. We have just been talking about getting VS Code installed, Python installed. So thank you so much for answering that. Okay, step one, virtual environments. Let's start. Okay, so I'll also add some setup guides and stuff. So actually, this would be session one, and the first thing that we are doing is going to do the setup Python environment. Okay, so in this case, step one is open terminal, which we did in VS Code. I'll also write that. Step two is ensure you are in the project folder. Which we are. I am in the finance with Python folder. And I can write here /. Actually, I will write path to finance with Python folder. Okay, I think this should be good enough for understanding. Then step three is creating the virtual environment. Right? So in this case, what's the command? So I'll first write the command here and then we will paste that. And so in our case, like for me, I'm going to go Python space -m venv and then the name of the environment, which in this case would be finance_env. Okay, so this is the environment that I want to create. Okay, so this is the command that we need to run. Ensure that you have Python, like what, check your Python version and then run the command. So if I run this, keep an eye on the left hand side on my project folder. If I do that, then it creates this folder finance_env, and that's it. Okay, and it has like 1K dependencies. Now I don't want to push all of these, so I'm going to create something called as a .gitignore file. Okay, and in this case I would say don't push the finance_env on GitHub. Okay, so this is one thing. So whatever you write in gitignore, these are the things that you don't push to GitHub account. Why should we not push, like why should I not push this environment? Because you can create your own by just running this command for the first time, right? So that is why we don't want to push that. It's similar to if you're coming from a JavaScript side, and if you have worked with a lot of npm packages, we don't push node modules folder because that is something that a user can create on their local, right, by just installing all the libraries, and that is done. Okay, there's some Mac specific directories that I don't want to push. Example .ds_store. I don't want to push that. What else? Python specific. So there would be later created something called as IPNP_checkpoints that I don't want to push. Yeah, I think this should be, these are at least the three things that come to my mind that I don't want to push to GitHub. Okay, these are the things that are more local. Okay, so once now that we have ran the command, and this is like it created this finance env folder, let's get to the next step. How do we activate this? Okay, like on my right you can see it's called, it still has base here. This should eventually change to the name of the environment that I created, finance env. So activate virtual environment. So to do that, the command is different depending on the OS you are working with. So if you are on Mac or Linux, then in that case, you have to do source space finance underscore env, which is the name of our environment, slash bin slash activate. Okay. But if you are on Windows, then in that case, the command changes to dot backslash finance underscore env, which is our environment, slash scripts and slash activate. Okay, so I'm on Mac, so I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to paste and hit enter, and now you see it says that finance env is activated. Okay, now this one comes because like my terminal is kind of structured, or yeah, I have a special setup, let's say, that's why it shows. But even if it doesn't, if you don't have that setup, that is fine. You can actually verify the activation. How do you do that? So if you are on Mac or Linux, you can run the command which Python. So if I do this, it should point to the current folder that I am in. Like it, this is my whole path. AIML week, finance with Python, finance env, bin Python. So it is pointing to the current Python installation. Sorry about that. Okay, so it is pointing to the current Python installation. And now someone needs to verify this. On Windows, I'm not sure what is the command. Is there something called as a where command in Windows? So I'm going to leave a comment here, need to check, okay, how to verify activation. Next one is, okay, so I think this should be a point where I should push all of this to the readme, and let me do that. So I'm going to do a git add, git commit dash m. This would be feature setup Python environment. Actually, let me also actually this should be fine, and let me do a git push. So now if you go over to the repository, you should have some more details. Okay, so let me go over any questions. Okay, number one, command not found, Python, what should I do? So that means you are missing installation of Python. So that is why you would need to download Python. I will share the link in the chat again. Download Python, and that should help. Okay, and oh, it is where? Okay, perfect. So then I can remove this part where Python. Okay, so if you do it on Windows, it should tell you which Python is activated. Okay, uh, so I will write a step 0, ensure Python is installed. and I'll also add the link to this. Oh, wait, am I doing it the other way? I think so. It's square bracket and then round bracket, I think. Yep, there we go. And you can read more about virtual environments on this particular link. So let me also share that with you. So I'll share this link in the README as well. So now let me amend my previous commit. So git add, git commit dash amend, git push dash f, because I made a change in the commit history. So wait, what happened? Nope. Okay. So I did 3 commits, but it says 2 commits because I amended my previous commit and said that, oh, please add this changes to the previous commit. Okay. So this one now has the link to Python downloading. It also has some information about Python virtual environments and everything else. Okay. And also remove the question mark check. Okay, perfect. Just a FYI, if you ever make an amend to your commit, in that case, you have to do a force push. Okay? Because you are basically telling Git to change the whole history of your commits. Okay, perfect. Nice. That is good. How will the recorded version of this tree? Do we get the recorded version? Sorry. Yes, you do. It will be available on GitHub. Sorry, what am I saying? YouTube. uh, me saying GitHub with so much confidence. Uh, let me share the link to YouTube channel. Uh, it should be available right here on the streams on YouTube. YouTube. Okay, there we go. The link to recorded sessions should be available here. You can see my session. You can see all the previous sessions that have happened in the previous GHW or the GHW or the AIML GHW. Okay. So there's this question: how will your README get synced to a clone repo? So it will get synced if you have forked the repo. Okay, if you have done a forking by going on here and forking the repository, then you should get a button saying sync with, like, this repository is some commits back. Do you want to sync? So there would be a sync fork button. Sync fork. GitHub. Yeah, something like this. Okay, there would be a button something like this. So that should actually help you to sync the fork. Okay, which sync is, yeah, coming in sync with my changes. If you have forked the repository, that is very important. Could also say branch is out of date. So depending on what's happening, like I don't have a fork of mine, so I can't actually show it right now. Yeah. Okay. So what's next? Now let's actually get things going. And to do that, we first need to install some required packages or required libraries. So I'm going to go install required packages. Okay. And in this case, we are going to use a command called as pip. So if you installed Python, I think you will get like actually not I think, you will get pip installed by default. Okay, so in my case, if I do pip dash dash version, it says pip 24.0 from this current virtual environment. Okay, this is where it is checking for that uh, pip version from. So what is pip? You can say it is, if you're coming from JavaScript, it is similar to npm. Okay, uh, and it helps you install libraries. I mean, like, I don't want to dive it deep into details of what is a package manager and all those things. So the command is pip install. Then which libraries do we want to install? We want to install multiple libraries. Like, I know that these would be required. So I'm going to go pip install numpy. This is one library. Space pandas. This is another library. Matplotlib, another library. Y Finance, another library. Yahoo Finance. MPL Finance, another library which we'll use for visualization. Plotly, another library for visualization. And Jupyter, which is something that we will use to write Python code in. Okay. Yeah. So these are the libraries that we want to install. And next step is to, let's create a requirements file. Create requirements.txt file. So why do we need to create this file? So a requirements.txt is basically a file that you can share with someone, and using that file, they can install all the libraries that you have installed. Okay. So it is basically to share your environment with someone. Remember that this finance env is not getting pushed to GitHub. You don't see it here, even though it is in my local. So that is happening because, like, not that is happening. Actually, we know why it is happening, because I said in ignore pushing this folder to GitHub. So how will someone actually get exactly what I have on my system? And that is where requirements.txt file comes in. And it goes like, you know what, if you share this with someone, uh, this requirements.txt file, then they can install the exact same libraries that you have on their system. So to create a requirements.txt, you do pip freeze, and then you this greater than sign is to basically say that whatever is the response from pip freeze, paste it into requirements.txt file. Excuse me, sorry. And to install from requirements.txt, you do pip install -r requirements.txt. Okay. So let's run this command. Oh, actually, I first need to install all the libraries. So I haven't run this command. Let me copy that, paste it right here, and it starts downloading everything. Okay. If it's your first time downloading stuff, then it might take a while. For me, most of these libraries actually exist on my system. So it is comparatively quicker. If you see somewhere it said using the cached version or something. Okay. Okay. Success. Okay, I'm still waiting. And once that is done, like while that is happening, actually, let me go and check any questions. Are we allowed to put this up as our own GitHub repository? Yes. Feel free. Anything that I build, anything that I share, any project that I build, feel free to put it on your GitHub, put it in your resume, put it out in the world. Definitely do that. Yes, and I created that. Did I misspell it? No. Requirements.txt. Yeah, created that. Is it just like a package? Yes, actually, that is a very good way of explaining things, right? Comparing things, not explaining, comparing things. Yes, it is like a package.json file. Okay, so all my installations have completed. Now let me create a pip freeze. So remember the number of libraries that I've installed: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Now if I create a pip freeze requirements.txt, there we go. But it has like 117 of them. Why? Because some of the libraries that I have installed actually also depend on some other libraries, right? So you could kind of uh, clear this up, as in like whatever you installed, which is NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, yfinance, MPL Finance, Plotly, and Jupyter. These are the main libraries that you installed. So you could delete all of the other things and just keep those in here. That is one way. Or you could be lazy like me and just share this whole thing with them. Okay. Because what this is saying is that NumPy, if I go and search for NumPy here, yes, NumPy 2.2 will depend, or at least internally, also needs some other libraries. And the system that I have, uh, or the requirements.txt file that, no, sorry, all the libraries that I have installed are using these exact versions. So NumPy 2.2, which might have depended on something else, and exactly that version of the library is written here. So you could technically either just share, like delete everything else and share NumPy 2.2, Pandas, whatever, Matplotlib, whatever, Plotly, whatever, let them install things. And these versions, like we did not install PV in here, but it still got installed because some library depended on this version of PV. Okay. I feel it's good to have everything that you need in your requirements.txt rather than making changes here and there. Okay. So I'm not going to delete stuff. I'm going to keep this exactly. So now if I share this with someone, they can create a environment, finance environment, and then do pip install -r requirements.txt, which should install the exact version of things. Okay. What else? Okay, we have learned how to activate environment. Let's say if you want to deactivate, uh, like when needed, of course. In that case, there's, I think, a single command that works on every machine, every OS, which is deactivate. Okay, so if I take this, uh, deactivate, and hit enter, finance env goes away. And if I now do, uh, should have just written which Python, it goes back to some other version, not the one in my current folder. But to activate this one, I can do this, and I'm now activated. And if I do which Python, comes back. Okay, so deactivating, that works. And the last thing is ensuring that your VS Code actually remains in sync with your virtual environment. Okay. So to do that, step one would be to open the VS Code settings. You could do it by going into settings and right here. No, actually, I think there would be a shorter command. You can do something like control, like on Windows, you can do control, or in Mac, you can do command plus shift plus P. Okay, so let me do that. Command Shift P, that opens this recently used things. In that case, sorry, a next step would be to type and search for Python colon select interpreter. Okay, and the third thing is choose the interpreter finance underscore env. Okay, so let me do that. Command Shift P, Python space colon select interpreter. I hit enter. Then it goes like, okay, which one? And then it says that in the current folder there is this finance env bin Python. So I choose that, and that's it. So now my VS Code actually knows which libraries I'm installing in this virtual environment, and it will remain in sync with that. Okay, let me do a amend again, and let me do a force push so that you have the exact version of whatever I wrote. So there we go. Everything is now right here. Let me share this with you all. And now I will go over all the questions. So for now, by the end of like in this last half an hour, 45 minutes, we have added exact steps of how to create environment. We have created an environment. We have created requirements.txt, and that's it. Uh, but I'm hoping that this has, for folks who are doing this for the very first time, you have learned something new. And for the folks who have done this before, uh, it's a refresh. And I'm hoping that you're helping everyone else on the stream. Okay, there's a very good question. How will the VS Code integration help? Now, why this helps is, you remember we installed something called as rough, which was, where is it? Yeah, which was for Python linting and code formatting. So let's say I go and create a new file. Uh, let me create one actually. I'll create a folder called as session underscore one. Inside this, I create a file called as session underscore one dot py. Dot py means dot Python file. And if I do import, what should I import? Pandas. Okay. So it says pandas is imported but unused. Now, if I go and import another library which I have not installed, I need to see which libraries exist. Okay, this one, state graph. Okay. Uh, yeah, state graph, let's say. And I've tried to do import state graph. So now you see this warning, import state graph could not be resolved. This is because it's trying to find it, but it is not on my system. Now, if let's say I installed it by doing pip install state graph, then and if I don't have it sync with my VS Code, it will still keep saying that you don't have it. Oh, actually, I have a better one. Install Flask. Okay. It says Flask could not be resolved because it knows that it is not installed in my current Python environment. On the bottom right, you can see it says it is currently looking into the finance environment in this current folder. And it knows that this library is not installed. If I install it and it is not in sync, VS Code will still tell me that it is not installed. But if I install it and I go and keep both of them in sync by choosing Python select interpreter and choosing this one, then every time I install something, VS Code will automatically know that this is installed on the current system, the current environment. And in that case, it will then also uh, tell rough, which is the linter, that this is installed. And then rough will not actually give us the error that this is not installed, but it might give us this warning that it is installed, imported, but not used. Okay. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Yeah, Flask. I finally went with Flask. It's like, I don't remember any libraries right now. Sorry, a bit of a cough right there. Okay. So I think that should have been good enough. Okay. Now let me delete this one and clear all of this. Let's get to the next part. The next part is to open Jupyter Notebook. Okay. So creating a Jupyter Notebook and opening it. So we'll do the very easy thing. So there are, like in our case, there are two ways to write Python code and run Python code. One is, what we can do is we can create a file, whatever is the name of the file. Like in my case, I was creating a session underscore one dot py. Okay, so the dot py is the extension and it is creating a Python file. Now we can write code inside this. Okay, example, one of this very simple code is print command. Okay, and one of the very famous print command to get started in any language is hello world, but in our case we will say hello GHW. Okay, save it. I have autosave on, by the way, so if I go into file, yeah, I have autosave on, but if you don't have it, you will have to do control s command s, something like that. And to run this, first I will check where am I. So I have to go inside the session1 folder and run the session1.py. So I can go like Python space session1 folder slash session1.py and hit enter. It prints hello GHW. Okay. I can do another print right here. And in this, I'm going to use \n and then write welcome to AI ML week and do a \n again. Now, if I run the same command, hello GHW, welcome to AI ML week, there is a space in between, there's a space below it. Okay, the \n is a new line. So this is one way to write Python code and run it. Nice. But since we are all learning, we are beginning the journey, and I want to run things quickly without going to the terminal, clicking on it and running on it. And also, because this is not exactly a Python code that we're running, we are going to run code by like writing, running, seeing the output, writing the next step, running, seeing the output. And one of the things that can help us is Jupyter Notebook. Okay. So let me show you the interface and then I think it would become more clear. So step one is open Jupyter Notebook. So how do you do that? So very simply, wherever you are there, like in your terminal, write Jupyter Notebook. Okay. Okay, I think this should be good enough. Let's try this out. Let me clear this. So in this current folder, where the current folder being Python, finance with Python, I'm going to do Jupyter space notebook. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter, and then it should try and open it, and it did actually on my other browser. So I'm going to copy paste it right here. So this is what Jupyter Notebook opened. Okay, it opened something on the browser where I have everything that was on my system, and I can add Python files here. I can interact with this. I can run it, and let's see the interface. So step one, we'll create a new notebook. As you can see, create a new Python 3 notebook in the desired folder. Let me also add that in the desired folder. So for me, the desired folder is session one. I go in, there is already a session 1.py. I don't care about that. I click on new, and I want a new notebook. You can also do file, new, and notebook. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't give notebook here. Interesting. So file, new, notebook, and it asks select the kernel for this file. Okay, currently it's untitled. There's no title to this notebook, and the question you may ask is, what is a kernel? So a kernel is basically the engine that will execute the code in the notebook. So Jupyter Notebook is not very Python specific. You can actually use Jupyter Notebook for other languages. In our case, we are using it for Python. So that is why our kernel is going to be Python 3. Okay, so I'm going to select that. So on the top right, you should see Python logo. Right here, you can see Python 3 kernel, and this is still called untitled. So I'm going to click on it, and I can change it. So I will name this as session-1.ipynb. So what is ipynb? It is, I think, interactive Python notebook. Okay. I don't remember the full form of I, but I think it is interactive. So this is what it created. Now, whatever we wrote in the session underscore 1.py, which is this print, I can come and paste it here. And to run this, you have the option of clicking this very nice run this cell. Let me zoom in a bit. You have this very nice option of clicking run this cell, or you can actually go and check this run command where it says run selected cell. Uh, and actually, for me, the shortcut is shift enter. So let me do that. Shift and enter, and there we go. It ran that command. I copy this one, put it in the next cell. Shift enter, runs that command, like runs whatever we asked it to. So it does the exact same thing that we were doing there on the terminal. The only difference is it does it in something called as cells. Okay. So cells are, you can think as individual lines or individual blocks where whatever code you write will run. But you have two types of cells actually. You have something called as a code cell, and you have something called as a markdown cell. Okay. So in this case, this is a code cell, this is a code cell, this is a code cell right now, and you can check it by clicking seeing this, but you can make it a markdown cell. And now any markdown language that you write, example, if I write GHW dash MLH with that one hash and shift enter, it becomes a title. I can go back, double click on it to edit it. I can have like session 1, intro to Python and setup. Shift enter, title, subtitle kind of, right? So whatever we wrote in the readme, technically, not technically, it is actually a markdown, but you can copy paste all of this in the Jupyter notebook, make it much more better looking. Yeah, that's the word I was searching for. Make it much more better looking. You can move cells up and down. So there is this move cell up arrow button. You can move cells down. You can add a cell below. You can add a cell above. You can delete a cell. Okay, there it goes. Bye bye. And you can go into settings to go for theme. You can go for a light theme. You can go for a dark high contrast theme. I'm going with dark. You can choose a few more things like increase code font size, decrease code font size, increase UI font size. So like let's say I click on that, things became a bit bigger there. Uh, the language, which is English, autosave the documents is switched on. Uh, console run keystroke. So how do you run a code cell or a markdown cell? You can choose. You can either hit enter to run it, or you can do shift enter, which is the default, and that is what I have. Text editor indentation, because if you know, and if you don't, that is fine. In Python, the concept of brackets is kind of missing. So if you want your code, how do I define this? If it is a very beginner level, okay, think of it as when you use brackets generally in other programming languages, you are saying that everything inside this brackets is part of one thing. In Python, they say everything that has same amount of spaces is one thing. So they call it indentation. So like 4 spaces is one block. Okay, so anything inside that 4 spaces is a block of code, and it is one thing. When we start writing it, I think that it would make it much more clearer. Auto close brackets is switched on, and I think this is good. Okay, now this is Python notebook, and this is nice, but it is also very raw. Excuse me, I have to. Sorry, my throat was parched. Okay, so this is very raw. There is something new, not exactly new, but there is also something called as Jupyter Lab, which is much more fancy looking, much more nicer looking. You can go into, I think, view and open in Jupyter Lab. That is what you can click. Or you can click on this Jupyter Lab icon right here to open it in Jupyter Lab. So if I do that, there we go. It is not much different from what we see in Jupyter Notebook. You just see these extra tabs around here, which if you want to, you can find it here as well. For example, if I go to, I think, view, click on this debugger panel, it shows this debugger panel on the right hand side. That is by default present in Jupyter Lab. I can click on debugger and it shows all those things. Okay. So whatever you have to choose, you can like basically do a choose what to see, what not to see by going in there and clicking it. Those options are by default visible as a part of Jupyter Lab. So nothing much changes. It's just like you prefer what you prefer. So for us, I think we should work in Jupyter Lab. I think just a better looking UI. That's the only reason. Okay, and what else? So now let me actually delete all of these things and let's start fresh. Okay, so we have done a bit of work Oh, you see this IPy NB checkpoints? This is something that I did not want to push. So that is why it's grayed out. Session1.py, I'll leave that as is. Session1 dot session dash one dot ipynb, that is here. Uh, but this is different. This has the old code. So to ensure that you are in sync, you can click on this, save and create a checkpoint, and that should do the saving. Um, I think that's it. This is a good enough point. Now let me push all of this. Created a new one, so I will activate this. Okay, and I think this is good enough to push, and I will push this as a new commit. So git add git commit dash m feature setup Jupyter notebook and Jupyter lab. Okay, that's what we saw. Okay, and let me do a git push. If I go over to this one, reload, it should have Jupyter notebook and session1 folder with session1.ipynb, the notebook, which is empty right now because we deleted everything, and session1.py file, which does not have much. You can ignore it for the time being. Yeah. Now let me see if there are any questions in the chat. No, I think this is good. We are good to go to the next steps. So the next steps would be, I'm going to close the notebook and only work with Jupyter Lab. Okay, so that there is no confusion about anything. Sorry, bad throat. Okay, let's dive into writing some code. Okay, so what code are we going to write? A lot of it, but step one is, let's not directly actually, let's start with some Python basics, which is what is variables, what is data types, control flow, functions, lists, dictionaries, all these things. Okay, and all the variable names that I use or whatever would be very focused on finance things. Okay, so I'm going to convert this from a code to a markdown, and the first thing that I am going to say is Python basics, and just right below it I will actually add a description. This section covers the fundamentals of Python, like variables, data types, control flow, lists, dictionaries, etc. We use financial terms. Actually, not really needed. This is fine. Okay, let's start with this one, Python basics. Shift enter. There we go. And now the first thing that we want to learn is variable, because, well, you can't really start without knowing variable, right? So example, if I just do a 150.75 and if I do a shift enter, it exactly prints out that thing, like, which is 150.75. Now I can assign this value. Okay, you can think this is a value to a variable. So in our case, I'm going to assign it to a stock price variable. Okay, so stock price equals to this, and I do a shift enter. The output is gone. Now that output is actually saved in this stock underscore price. And if I do a shift enter, there we go. So this is the first thing that we are learning, variables. Okay. Now you can have variables of different types. So I am going to go back here, and this type where you use decimal numbers, decimal points, because stock price does not always be a whole number, right? So anything that is decimal is called as a float. Very simple. The next one is, what about whole numbers? Example, you can buy shares in whole numbers. Okay, so for someone who is not really aware, uh, shares are like holding a portion of a company. It could be floating actually, but more often than not, we prefer to buy it in whole numbers or natural numbers. Like no one buys zero shares. That's just saying not buying. But you buy shares in natural numbers, and natural numbers, whole numbers, both of them are of type integer. Okay. Then what about the name of the stock? Okay, so the stocks normally have a ticker. So if I go to Google Finance, and if I want to know the Apple stock, I can search for Apple, and you see this Apple INC double APL Nasdaq US. So this double APL is its stock ticker. Okay, so if I go over here and I go like stock name equals to Apple, then, and if I run this, it says name Apple is not defined. Because if you see, stock name also is a variable, and it is assuming this double APL Apple is also a variable, but it is not. It is actually the name of the stock. So these things are strings. Okay, you wrap them in single or double inverted comma. So this is of type string. Also, if you haven't understood by now, the hash, okay, the hash key is to add a comment. Now anytime I run this code, it does not print out this hash float, hash int, hash string. Okay, and we can see that by doing stock underscore price, just prints out this thing, not the hash part, because that is comment. Okay, that is for your understanding. Shares 10, stock underscore name Apple. Okay, even if I use double inverted, it returns a single inverted. Okay, then you can say if this thing is profitable or not. Now if it is profitable, it could be either true or it could be false. These are called as boolean values. So I create a variable called as is profitable equals true, and this is called as a boolean. Now I am going to put all of these in a single cell, and I'm going to run this. So you see this error, it says that name is profitable is not defined. It is here, but it is still not defined. Why? Because we did not run this cell after writing this. That is why you see this dot over here. It says that something changed, but you did not run this. So whenever you make a change, and for Jupyter Notebook to remember that, or like your Python kernel specifically to remember that you have made a change, a new variable has been introduced, something has been deleted, something changed, you need to rerun that cell. So I'll go back here and do a shift enter. Now it has run. Now if I do a shift enter again, it prints out true, which is just the last thing, but we want to print out everything. Okay, so two ways: I can put it in one cell at a time and execute it, or I can just do a print statement around it. Okay, now it prints out everything that we wrote. So normally if you write something in a cell, if you have like multiple things in a cell and you do a shift enter, it only runs the last thing, or not runs, sorry, it only prints the last thing. It runs everything. Uh, but if you want to print everything that is in the cell, you can use print statements. Now, if you see this print statement, imagine you are not seeing the top. Like if I hide it with my hand, uh, and you only see this thing, then it is not really clear what is happening. Okay, what happened right here? 150.75. What is that? 10. The apple. Okay, apple is still understandable. True. What is true? What is false? Okay, so we don't really understand what is going on if we don't know what is this. Like if you, let's say I delete this. Okay, I do a control X there. Remember, I've deleted it, but it will still be in the memory of Python. It will still think that these variables exist. Okay, now if you see this output, it is not really clear what is happening. So there is a like you can do something like stock underscore price and then put a comma and then run this. So now it prints out whatever you have given here in the first part, comma, the value of the variables. This makes it a bit more understandable. Okay, so that is one thing. You can do this exact same thing using something called as f strings. So normally if you do this, you wrap whatever text you want to present in a double inverted or single inverted comma. When you come out of that, you put a comma and then you put a variable name. What if you want to do all of it in one line? You can use something called as f strings, which is you put a f, double inverted, shares, and let's say I did a colon there, so I will do that here. And then you can put a curly bracket, and inside this, you can define the variable and then close it with double inverted again. And now if I do this, shares 10. Let me put this back, this and this. Okay. So we will use f strings a lot in our code. Yeah, we'll use f strings a lot in our code. So I think this is a good way to learn it. What exactly does it do? So f strings right here. And if I close this, this will give an error. Okay, if I remove this one, because it is assuming that stock price is also a string, but it is not. It is a variable. That is why you put it in a curly brackets. So now this is better. And now similarly, I can do something like stock name. And here I will have the variable stock name. And similarly for is profitable. Of course, you can write anything here. So I can like go, is this profitable? Profitable. And I can then do a is profitable variable. So whatever you write there comes back here. Okay. In my case, I prefer it to be the variable name so that it's easy to search. Okay. So this is f strings. So we learned about f strings. We learned about variables. Now, normally, like for now, I've written that this is of type float, this is of type int, this is of type string, this is of type boolean. But what if you want to print that as well? Okay? And you can do that by doing something like checking the type. So in my case, I'm going to go over to stock price and I'm going to put a colon, and then I'm going to put another curly bracket and I will say type of stock price. And if I do shift enter, you see this is the colon that I put, and then it says it is class float. Actually, instead of colon, I'll put an arrow. Yes, much more understandable. Similarly, I will now copy paste all of this. We'll also copy paste the arrow. And just change the variable name. So what does this give us? So it gives us the ability that whenever you get a value of a variable, or you get a variable and you don't know what is the type of that variable, you can just do type and then name of that variable. And depending on the type, you can make a decision what to do next. Okay. For example, if you get the type of some variable as bool, which is boolean, then you can make a decision that, oh, if it's boolean and if it is uh, true, then I want to do this. Else, if the type of the variable is string, then what is the value? The value is this, then I want to do something else. Like, you can make decision depending on the type of the variable, depending on the value of the variable. Which brings me, uh, actually no, before that, so it brings me normally to decision making, which is where we do conditional checks, we do something else, control flow statements, decision making. But in my case, I'm also missing two more things, which is lists and dictionaries. Okay, so let's go there. I'm going to go over to the next one. So a list is an ordered collection of items. So the order uh, remains as is. So example, I can create a variable. So previously it was stock price. I'm now creating stock prices, which means it is multiple. And I can create a list, which is like an array if you're coming from any other uh, language. So an array. And in this, you can have multiple things. Example, I can say that the stock prices of something was 150.75, 152.30, then 148 exactly, then 151.00, and then 153 exactly. So this list is actually a mixture of float and int. Okay, float and int. And then for, let's say, someday the market was closed, so now this list is actually a mixture of float, int, and string. Okay, so a list can have anything. So if I run this, nothing happens. I should also print it out, and that's what it exactly contains. Now, depending on this, why would you ever use this? That may be the question that you ask. That why are we ever going to use this? Example, let's say I'm making a list of all the stock prices of Apple in last 7 days. So in last 7 days, the market was closed on Saturday and Sunday. So I have the value on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then on the sixth day it was closed, and on the seventh day it was closed. So this is the array of, or the list of, stock prices of Apple in the last 7 days, where the market was closed on 2 days. Okay, so that is when, like, that is one of the examples of when you would use a list. Yeah, and the next one that I want to create is dictionary. Also, you can print the type as well. Okay, so if I do a print here of stock prices, and then the print of type of stock prices, the values, the type. The next one is dictionary. So the dictionary has a syntax. It looks like, it's like curly brackets, and then it is a key colon value. Okay, now in our case, let's say the key is called name. Could be anything. You can say it is a stock name. That's the key, and the value is Apple. You might think I'm obsessed with Apple. at this point. And then you can have the price, and it was 150.75, let's say. Then you can say how many shares did I have, and I had 10. Now if I print this, it gives me exactly that thing. Why would you ever use this? When you want to create structured data, example, okay? Now, currently, whatever we created is whatever we printed. But at some point, okay, you might end up with a empty dictionary. So this is a empty dictionary that you create. And now in this empty dictionary, you want to add values or remove values. So that is when this comes in handy. Like you can create a dictionary for stock name, price, shares, then another stock name, price, shares. You can have a dictionary inside dictionary. You can have a dictionary with arrays. You can have like so many things. So the idea is that you use dictionary when you want to structure your data into a certain format. Okay, example, stock name, price, shares. Okay, excuse me, sorry. Okay, so that is about dictionary. You can also print the type. So let me, perfect. So that is our few parts of basics done. So we have done variables, lists, dictionaries. Uh, let's dive a little bit more into list and dictionary. Okay. So diving deep into list, actually, that wouldn't be much. But let me add a new cell here. So how do I access? So let's say step one, I want to print out, or actually just let me do stock prices. So stock underscore prices. This is my list. Okay. And then I want to access, I want to see how many things are there in that. So I can do something called as len and then do shift enter. It returns me 7. So if I do go and do a count, so it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So there are 7 items in the list. Now, if you want to check, let me also add a print statement and f strings. And since this is a code block, it would be in curly brackets. So length is what I am doing here. Next one is, what about the first element? Okay, the first element is 150.75. So can I do stock price, stock prices? And to get the first element, you can do 1, right? Square bracket 1, and it returns 152.3, which is not the first element, it is the second element. So this is because array uses zero indexing, zero based indexing. So the first element is the 0th element. And this is like, even after so many times, I sometimes just forget. Okay. So this is something that you need to remember again and again and again, that, oh, the first element is actually the 0th position. So the position of 150.75 is 0. The position of 152.30 is 1. Then this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the last position is actually 6, but the length of it is a natural number, natural counting number, and it is 7. Okay. So if I try to do stock prices of 7, it will say it is out of range. Okay. But if I do 6, that should return me the closed. Or let's say I can differentiate between this, close Saturday, closed Sunday, and it returns me closed Sunday. Okay. So that is one thing to definitely remember, that in list you use a zero based indexing, and the first element is actually the zeroth position element. Okay, now let's come to our dictionaries. Now dictionaries have a lot more, even in like list you have a lot more, but not really needed. Two things that are definitely needed is to know the length of a list, and the second is accessing the elements, which is by doing indexing. Okay, okay, coming back to this one. So how do I get uh, the value? Actually, let me call this name. Okay, name. How do I get the value of this key? So let's start from there. So I'm going to do a print statement, and I will say to get that value, you can do stock underscore info, which is the name of our dictionary. And can I do like a zero here? Because that is at the zeroth position. That's what we learned. Oh, remove this question mark. Nope. There is nothing called as zero because this key does not exist. So in dictionaries, you access something by the key name. So in our case, I know that the key is called name, and that returns me the value apple. So if I go for price, it returns me 150.75. If I do shares, it returns me 10. Notice the syntax. It is very similar to what we did for list. Square bracket and then something. In case of list, it was a position, but in case of dictionary, it is actually the name of the key. So if I do like stock info of 10, it says a key error because it's trying to search for a key called as 10, which does not exist, unfortunately. So that is uh, accessing by the key. Then you can get a list of all the keys, of course. Like, let's say it's not you who created this dictionary. Then in that case, you could do stock info dot keys, and that should return you a list of dictionary keys. And I say a list, you can also check what is the type. It is dictionary keys. Okay, excuse me. You can also get a list of values. So if I copy this, paste it right here, do values, it returns me all the dictionary values. There's also something called as items. Okay, stock info dot items, and that returns me name apple, price 150.75, shares 10. Okay, now this curly bracket sorry, this round bracket or a parenthesis syntax is a tuple. Okay, but I'm not going to get deep into tuple right now, out of scope of what we are going to do. uh, okay, next thing is, so we saw that to access the shares, we did stock info square bracket key name. You can also use another syntax, which is the get syntax. So I can do stock info dot get and then give it a key name. Example, if I give it price and I do shift enter, it returns me 150.75. So we know that that is correct because I can see it right here. So you can use this get syntax. Now get syntax is very powerful because let's say if I want to get something that does not exist, like country. Okay, if I do that, it does not error out. It says none. But if I do it in the square bracket format, so example, if I do stock info country, it fails at that line. You see this? It failed at that line because it says could not find country. So the get syntax is powerful because if something that you are trying to search for does not exist, it does not error out. It just returns none, okay, which is another data type. So using this, you can again make a decision. on whatever code you're writing, that if the return value is none, then in that case, uh, I want you to like do something else. But if you did find a value, if you found like if the return value is something other than none, then I want you to do something else. Okay, so you can make decisions based on the return value. Uh, Also, you can define your own return type in not return type, but in case of get syntax, you can say try to get, let's say, sector, which does not exist, and if it does not exist, return NA. So now if I do this, instead of none, it returns NA. I can make it like return not found. Okay, so I can make it specifically return something depending on if it found it or not. If it finds it, example, if I go back to name, then it will return the value. But if it did not find it, then it will return what you asked it to return. So you can either have a none being returned, or you can actually have something like specifically what you want to be returned. Okay, so that is a really nice thing of the get syntax. Very powerful. Okay, let me push all of this for now. Clear this up. Also, I'm going to be lazy a bit, and I am going to copy whatever it is here into this print statement, and I'm going to copy paste all of this into the Python file actually. So if you want to run the Python file, you can, and this is going to be a problem. I need to make this a single one. Okay, wrote too many things. Give me a second here, please, people. This will be a problem again because double inverted, you have escape hell. Okay, you cannot, like, you'll have to write down escape syntax using backticks and stuff, which I don't really like. So I would change it to a single one. Okay, so if I run this, yep, everything comes back. What else am I missing? I can use, excuse me, can cut this one, paste it right here. Can use f strings here. Like, there's no reason why I'm switching between this type, like this way of writing and this way of writing. Just like whatever seems easy when I'm writing it is what I go for. Or whatever is more convenient with respect to what other things I've written. Okay. Okay, everything works. Need this. Okay, so if I want to start fresh, okay, there's one thing that I want to show before I push, which is if you want to start fresh and clear everything, you can go into kernel and you can choose this option, restart kernel and clear outputs of all cells, which is like a way of saying reset. Okay, restart. So if I do that, you will see that it loses these numbers on the left, which means none of them have been run. So now I can start fresh by doing shift enter, shift enter, shift enter, shift enter. Okay. fresh output. So now I'm going to copy this very quickly into the Python file as well to show you that whatever we did actually works out properly in Python as well. Okay, so I can run this by doing Python space session1 underscore, like in the session1 folder, and then slash session underscore 1.py file, hit enter, and returns me all the outputs that we actually have seen here. Okay, like 150.75 arrow class float. There you go. The last one was stock info.get sector not found, return not found. There you go. Okay, I'm also going to try and keep this file in sync with the IPy notebook. Okay, and this time it would be feature uh, basic data types. And let me push this. Okay, perfect. So that done. Let's go over to this one, and you can find all the code into this one and go into the IPy notebook if you want. You can check it there, or you can come back and check it in the Python file. Okay, and if you want to see whatever I have pushed one bit at a time, you can go into commits and you can go through incremental steps. Like the first one was initial commit, did not add much. The second one was setup Python, and these are the changes that I did in, with the name of the file and what was added. Name of the file, what was added. If something gets removed, it will show that as well. Next one was this one. So these were the two things that were added. Okay. The next one was basic data types in Python. So this, what you see, this IPy notebook, this is the raw version of the Python notebook. Okay. But what you want to do is visualize the notebook, which is why you don't see it from there. You go in here and open it, and you see the output exactly as you see it on the web. Okay. Okay. So that is about basic data types. Okay. Let's go back and let's add a few more things. So the next thing that I want you to learn is functions. Okay. And then we want to actually also look into control flow statements, loops. Yeah, I think these should be good enough, actually. So let's write the first function. So what is a function? So right now, whatever we were doing was a single block of code. Okay. So like one cell is what we are writing, and we are assigning variables to values, or sorry, values to variables, and printing it out. But what if you want to do something again and again and again? Example, let me give you an example. For a particular share, okay, for a particular stock price multiplied by particular shares, like a number of shares, that should return you the total value. Okay, because if you have 10 stocks of Apple priced at 150.75, a multiplication will tell you how much you have invested, how much total money you have invested in Apple. Okay, or whatever is the total value of Apple stocks that you own. So you can do that in one way. You can go like total underscore value equals to, you need to know the price, which is 150, multiplied by number of shares, which is 10, shift in, or actually also do a total underscore value, shift enter, and you have invested this much amount. Okay. You can enhance it by doing print and then doing like f strings again, a dollar sign, because well, Apple stocks dollars, and say total value colon this. Okay. So this is how much you have invested. uh, Enhance it further, you can go like total value of double APL, like Apple equals this. Okay, cool. Now if I give you another share, then what you'll do, you will go this, like let's say the next day price of Apple was 152.30. Okay, and you still own 10 shares, and then you will do this again and again and again. So for every day you calculate the total value, and that is cumbersome. Okay, don't know about you, but I find it cumbersome. So what can we do which will ensure that this logic can become a boxed logic, and every time you pass two variables, one is the price and the other is the shares, to that box, it should return you this multiplied value. And that is where functions come into picture. Okay, so a function is nothing but a boxed like a boxed machine. Okay, a black box I would call it, because sometimes you don't actually know what the function looks like unless you wrote it. So it's a magic box where, depending on if it needs a value, does not need a value, you pass it a value or you don't pass it a value, and it returns something back. So let's create our first function, which would be called as calculating the total value. So to create a function, the syntax is you do a def, which is define a function, and you name the function something. So in my case, I am going to call it calculate underscore total underscore value. And this one will take two things. Okay, it will take in two variables. One variable will be price, and the second variable would be shares. Okay, or I can go a bit more and go number of shares, and then you use a colon, yeah, a colon, and then you do enter. Okay, not shift enter, because that will run this cell. And you see this additional space that is added, this is what is indentation. And in our case, it should return the price multiplied by number of shares, which is this. So this is what it will return, and that's it. And that's a very simple thing. I do a shift enter, does not do anything. But now I can call this function and assign it to a variable. So total value equals calculate total value. And now this one, it takes in the stock price. So do we have a stock price as a variable? Yes, we do. I'm going to pass it stock underscore price, which was defined above, which was 150.75. And also pass it another one, which is the number of shares. Do we have another variable for shares? Yes, there is a shares variable. So you notice the name that do not need to match. It was price and number of shares, but I'm passing it stock underscore price comma shares, and that works. Okay. And I can then do a print of total underscore value, shift enter, returns me this. I can enhance this, of course. But now what we have created is a machine to calculate the total value again and again and again. And I don't have to give it a variable. I can just pass it. The stock price is, let's say, 300, 305.78, and the number of shares is 14, and that returns 4280.92. Okay, the last value. So you see, if I have two variables of the same name, the last one is what actually is considered. Okay, so it over the the second line overwrites the first one. Also, you can see the line numbers actually by going into view and show line numbers. Okay. So the variable on line 1 here, total value, gets overridden by the variable at line 2 here. Okay. So whatever is the value of this, it changes. So I can actually take this print, put it here, and then do. Now I have two things. So this, for the first time it calculated total value as 1507.5. The second time it calculated the total value as whatever is the number passed in here. So with functions, what we essentially do is create a machine of doing something, okay? A machine of doing some repetitive task. Now this one was kind of easy. It only does a multiplication and returns us the value, but you can make it as complicated as you want, actually, right? Because all you need to do is inside this machine, inside this black box, you need to add things, add more things, add more things, add more things, and yeah, that's it. Okay, so this is a very crude and but still very effective uh, explanation of functions. Now let me use f strings. Use dollar. Why a dollar? Because, well, the price would be in dollar. I'm going to copy this exactly over here. Okay, cool. So this is done. Functions. Now these functions, remember, it took two parameters, price and number of shares. Okay? You can have functions which don't take anything, no parameter. And yeah, when we create it, we'll see it. I don't know if you will create something like that for now, but it is possible. Okay, you can have functions with no parameters. Okay, next one would be the control flow. Okay, uh, and in control flow we can check. So let's write a control flow. So what is control flow? It's nothing but a if else statement. Okay, so I can go like if this variable total value, okay, if total value is more than, which is like, I'll use this greater than symbol or this arrow, if it is more than 3000, then colon, and then I will say print this is profitable. Okay, else I can say print this is not profitable. And now if I run this, it prints out this is profitable. Now I can make this condition a bit more I can add to this condition. Yes, that's what I want to say. So if total value is more than 3000 and, okay, the English and total value is less than 4000, this is somewhat profitable. Okay, and then we can add another condition saying elif, okay, which is a short form for else if, and this is the Python syntax. Elif total underscore value, actually make this 5000, total value is more than 5000. In that case, I want to say this is very profitable. Else this. Now if I run this, I get the answer this is somewhat profitable. Why? Because my total value is 4280. So So I can also print my last total value actually, so that it makes it much more easier. Actually variable name, and don't need the dollar sign. Okay, so the total value is 4280, and depending on like which condition works out, it is printing. So actually let's try and change this. So if it is 30 shares at 14, shift enter, shift enter. So now the value of total value is 420, and 420 is not profitable. Okay, what if I make it 1300 and the stock price is at 16? This is very profitable. Okay, so that is a very simple control flow. Okay? Depending on the value of the variable in this case, we are switching between what should be printed. Okay, so that is a control flow. uh, Loops, yes, that's one last, actually not last, we have 7 minutes. I think we should be able to uh yeah, like, so loops are basically iterations, like keep doing something again and again. uh so example, I can say for, so there is a for loop, there is a while loop. In our case we will use a for, and the syntax is for a variable, which could be anything, like you can call it my price. For my price in, now you loop over something called as iterables. Now what are iterables? So a dictionary is iterable, a list is iterable. So I will say, like, for my price in stock underscore prices, which is an iterable, print the my price. I'm going to use f string. I will say that the price would be in dollar and my price. And if I do shift enter, this is what it prints out. So it went over every element of stock prices. Let me also print stock prices very quickly here. Okay, it went over every element of stock prices, which was 150.75, 152.3, this, and it printed them out. Now, close Saturday, close Sunday in dollars, that is bad. Excuse me. So now this is where you see magic happening, right? Not magic, sorry. This is where you can use whatever we learned before to actually make change in what is being printed. So I can say that, like, dollar close Saturday, dollar close Sunday does not look good. So what can we do here? We can say if type of my price is string. Okay. In that case, print f string and then directly my price. Else, print f string with dollar symbol my price. Okay. Now, if this does not work out, you have to find a solution. If it does, then that's a different thing. Okay. So now there is a problem. Even though I added a condition, it did not work out. So let's try and debug this. So I'm going to try and print the type of my price. Float, float, print, float, float, str. So why would this not work? Okay. So now this is a question, and let's check how to check types of Python variable. Okay, so type is not a problem. Instance, okay. Type this, type this, type this, type this. And what we want to do is compare like the type matching something. Okay. So what we want to check is how do we check how to match if type of Python variable is string. In that case, the correct way is it an instance of, like, is instance s and str. Okay, so you can do something like if it is an instance of this type. So let's try that. Where's my this one? Yep. So what we want to do is is instance my price comma str. If it is an instance of this, then do this, else print my price. Let's try this again, and let me remove this print statement. And there we go. Anytime it is a integer or a float, in that case it prints the dollar sign. But if it's an instance or the type of it is actually a string, in that case it does not print the dollar sign. So we have combined loops along with control flow statements, and that is, I think, where I want to stop for this session. Okay, in the next session, which is after 1 hour actually, we will start working with some libraries, which is NumPy, Pandas. We'll create something called as data frames, and we'll start doing some plotting. Okay, so I hope you're excited for that session because I am. So we have in this session we set up Python, we set up Jupyter Notebook, we learned the very basics of Python, and I'm assuming like some of you might have been bored if you already know this, but that's fine. This one was for beginners, but the next one would take it a bit more ahead, okay, a bit more advanced. I'll push all of this after the end of this session. Any questions, anyone, before we go on a break? My next session is actually after 1 hour, so you can have lunch or something, uh, lunch, dinner, depending on where you are. And we'll be back in 1 hour for session 2 of Finance with Python. Okay, uh, before I go, there is one very humble request. Please, if possible, and please make sure that it is, fill the feedback form. Okay, so we have a new thing where you can actually provide feedback on the session. If you go to the link that I shared in the chat right now and it is highlighted, you can basically go and provide feedback for my session. So you can go and search for Finance with Python Part 1, and then you can give a rating. You can tell what you liked, what you did not, and all those things. Okay. Uh, well, 1 is the minimum stars, 10 is the maximum. I'm not going to rate my session, but just wanted to show you what you can do and how. Uh, so if possible, please do give a rating. This will help MLH make a decision of what the session was, what you liked, what you did not, and I can improve on my sessions. Yeah. So this is a very humble request. Please do find time to provide feedback for this session. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If there are no further questions, I would like to end the session now, and I will see you back in an hour. Okay, with the part 2 of this session, where we continue with, as I said, data frames, NumPy, creating visualizations, and stuff like that. Okay, cool. Thanks so much, everyone. Cheers. Bye.